This episode is brought to you by Silly.com. Based in Maui, Hawaii, Silly.com believes psychedelic medicine is the future of mental health. For the millions of people worldwide struggling with mental illness, access to therapeutic plant medicine is a ray of hope. Silly.com is here to share these therapies with the world. Because in the current medical health landscape, certain therapies are not working and the problem is only getting worse. They believe that the plant got it right. That is why Silly.com is focused on natural psychedelic therapies that create better, safer treatments and will help speed up the FDA approval and legalization process so people can get more effective help faster. They call this the new standard of pharma. Mahalo to Silly.com for supporting the podcast and check them out on their website. That's psly.com. Aloha everybody, welcome to the Hawaiiverse podcast, a podcast that supports local by voting for all the political candidates with Hawaiian last names when you're stuck between people you never heard of. I'm your host Kamaka Diaz, and I may or may not have done that before. Make sure you go out and vote though. No vote, no grumble. Okay, we have a special episode today with a political candidate, but before we introduce him, I gotta tell you about this week's local business giveaway being provided by Black Point Company. They make women upcycled shirts and sustainable home goods. This week, they are giving away a Mandate, Aloha hat, and t-shirt, so make sure you head over to Hawaiiverse on Instagram to enter. Oh, and one last thing before we introduce our guest. This is a first for the podcast, but I really want to share this story and give a shout out to one of our listeners, Adaya. Aloha, Adaya. Mahalo for the support. I met her brother, Peter, surfing the other day, and he recognized me from the podcast. So we started talking stories for a little bit in the water, and I check my messages before I go to sleep, and I saw one from him, and he tells me his sister actually sent him the podcast before we surfed, and then the next day he coincidentally met me. So he sent me a screenshot of him telling Adaya he met me, and she said she just finished listening to 5 episodes in one day. That is some crazy dedication. I wouldn't even do that to my own podcast. So I really appreciate stuff like that. So I just wanted to share that with you all you listeners out there. It means so much to me. So I'll keep doing what I do, and hopefully you guys keep liking it. Okay, sorry, this is the longest introduction ever. And our guest is waiting patiently for me to shut up. So let's introduce him. Our guest today is a community and business leader from the island of Oʻahu. He is the executive director of the Central Pacific Bank Foundation, former vice president of Island Holdings, Inc., and previously was the head of the Hawaii High School Athletic Association for 12 years. He helped transform youth sports in Hawaii, and when state budget cuts threatened to end junior varsity athletics, he led the Save Our Sports campaign, raising over $1.5 million in 3 months and keeping youth sports alive in Hawaii. This husband of 26 years and father to 1 son is now running as a Democrat for Lieutenant Governor of Hawaiʻi and hopes to bring some good positive change to the islands. His name is Keith Amemiya. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Aloha, Kamaka. Thanks for having me.
Of course. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it is. It is. Last time we were testing poke.
Yeah, we met a couple months ago. Yeah, doing a poke tasting. That was really, really awesome. And I really enjoyed our time together. And sorry, my mic just kind of fell. Yeah, I really enjoyed our time together, and I thought it would be cool to have you on the podcast just to talk story. I know you're running for lieutenant governor, but you have an impressive resume, and we'll talk about politics for sure, but I kind of just want to get to know your life story. So, before we get into all the heavy stuff, just want to know, where are you from, where you grad, and what was it like growing up?
So I was born and raised on Oʻahu, and so like many of us, I'm fortunate to have been raised here, and I'm fortunate to still be able to live here and raise my own family here. I went to public school through 10th grade. I grew up in Hawaii Kai, so I went to Kamiluiki Elementary School, New Valley Middle School, Kaiser High School, and then I finished my last 2 years at Punahou School. It was in high school that my best friend's family hanai'd me, or adopted me, because of some family issues at home with my regular family, and that helped transform my life, because someone with no blood relations took me in unconditionally. They had 4 kids of their own, and so that really was the impetus for me wanting to show appreciation, gratitude, and giving back to the community afterwards, and helping others, especially youth who needed a helping hand, and some adult figure to help them out. And so that's my story through high school. Grew up in Kuli'o'o, and I went to school at the University of Hawaii in Manoa, got a business degree in finance, and then I went to the University of Hawaii's William S. Richardson School of Law and got a law degree. I started off as a litigator, and then I took over as the head of the Hawaii High School Athletic Association, which a lot of people know me from.
Yeah, that's kind of your claim to fame, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I didn't know you went to Kaiser. I graduated from Kaiser. I only went there 1 year because I'm from the Big Island, so I moved there my senior year. Yeah, and I know Camilo Iki, New Valley. That's not my stomping grounds. I was there for a year, but I live on that side, so.
Yeah, small world, and so that was a great experience. And then as you mentioned, segueing to high school athletics. That was another transformative period in my life because I was a litigation attorney. I worked in downtown. I really didn't get outside of downtown, but by being the head of the Hawaii High School Athletic Association, I was the head of high school sports across the entire state. I oversaw the high school athletic programs of all 98 high schools across the state, and that gave me an opportunity to visit every corner of the state, get to know the communities well in those states, and opened my eyes that a lot of working families were struggling across the state, and that things I may have taken for granted certainly wasn't the norm for a lot of families. I don't think even the general public truly appreciates that there's a lot of families out there where the kids who go to public school, their only meal during the week is at public school, or at least their only nutritious meals are by going to school. So that compelled me to want to do more, want me to get into public service, and that's fast forwarding to today and why I'm here today running for lieutenant governor.
So do you think growing up you were kind of in a bubble living in, the Hawaii Kai, Kuli'o'o side, and then you at public school, and then you went to private school at Punahou. So you're kind of, from like Hawaii Kai to town, that's kind of was your area. And then working for the high school at Hawaii High School Athletic Association. Can I say it?
You can shorten it. Even the acronym is long. HHSAA. Okay. That's fine.
The high school thing.
Yeah.
So when you were doing the high school thing.
Yeah.
So you got to visit like places that you probably never even been to, right? So I mean.
Yes.
Going to like the west side, how people view the west side compared to like Hawaii Kai. Right. What was that like?
Yes. So no question, it again opened my eyes. I got to visit all 98 high schools, as I mentioned, every community. And that's actually an advantage in running for office because very few people have the opportunity that I had to go to every community on a regular basis and listen and learn from those communities and develop contacts with those communities. And so, yes, in many ways, I was sheltered, as you pointed out, by primarily hanging out on the East Honolulu side. But at the same time, I do want to give a shout out to my Hanai parents because they taught me a lot of structure and discipline, and they made me work hard. Like, yes, I went to Punahou my last 2 years, but we worked hard on the weekends with household chores. We had to study, no TV. Back then, no iPhones or anything. Yeah. And so it certainly wasn't a rough life, but it was a very structured and disciplined life, which I appreciate to this day. But yes, going out, I just came back from Waianae, or the Leeward Coast, to speak to their Kupuna Council out there. And it reminded me one of the first experiences I had at the HHSAA was going to a Waianae high school football game on a Friday. And silly me, who doesn't go out there or didn't go out there too often before, left for a 7:30 game around 6:15 from town. And anyone who lives on the Leeward Coast knows Friday rush hour traffic going back home is crazy. It can take 2-3 hours easy. And needless to say, I got to the game around halftime and missed the first half, obviously. And it made me realize that, wow, there's people that go through this every day. And it's taxing, it's draining, it impacts quality of life, family life, when you're out on the road for several hours a day. Yeah. That's less time to be with your family, less time to rest or do things that, you enjoy. And so that gave me a deeper appreciation. Also, going to the neighbor islands taught me a lot that, that's 30% of the population. We tend to be Oahu-centric. I might have been that way before, but I'm certainly not Oahu-centric now. Living on the neighbor islands is another set of challenges. Almost everything is on Oahu, whether it's weddings, family parties, graduation, luau's, or sporting events. And there's extra cost involved, extra time involved. And so that's another advantage I feel I have running for office, is that I understand the challenges that not only people from the Leeward Coast or the North Shore on Oahu or the neighbor islands, face on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I noticed when we talked the first time. We were talking about kind of how some people are, in a way sheltered, or they live in a bubble, whether that's, just in a country club or whatever it is, they grow up in a certain area and they don't really branch out. And that's relatable to, a lot of people, not just politics. Some people just only grow up in a certain area. They never leave Hawaii, maybe, and it's not until you leave your comfort zone and you see what's out there, you gain perspective on so many more things. So that is a strength that you have. But going a little back, I just want to know, because you work with the High School Sports Association, HHSAA. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you play sports growing up? What kind of things did you do growing up?
So I played growing up all different sports, football, basketball, baseball. And back then, so those of you who played sports recently in high school or have kids who played high school sports, there's a lot of specialization where you only play one sport all year round. But when I was younger, you just went from football to basketball to baseball. And everyone assumes since I ran HHSAA, I was some incredible all-state athlete in multiple sports. And I really wasn't. I was very mediocre. I participated in track. I ran middle distance, and I was okay. But I learned from my high school experience myself and then running HHSAA that high school sports is valuable to everybody, not just the all-state performers or the people who become professional athletes. Because sports is a good classroom that teaches you more than math and English. It teaches you life skills. And that's arguably the most important thing of all. You can be the smartest person in the world book-wise, but if you don't have social skills, you don't learn discipline, you don't learn perseverance and teamwork, you're not going to be successful in your adult life. And so I'm a perfect example that high school sports is important for everybody, and you don't have to be a good athlete to benefit from it. And I know you're a surfer, and I'm going to segue a bit and say that with the help of Carissa Moore and others, we're going to make high school surfing an official Hawaii sport. Nice. Sooner than later. We're going to keep trying.
Okay, cool.
I
want to clarify. I surf. I always told myself I'm not going to say I'm a surfer because that implies that you're probably good.
Right.
So I was a soccer player and football player growing up, which is what I appreciate about you. Sticking out for the JV sports, the varsity sports. Because it like you said, it's so important. Some of my best friends in life have been from sports. Some of the best life lessons I've learned is from sports. And I continually learn, how to fail, how to persevere, how to be resilient. All of that was, from growing up and playing sports. It's so important, yeah. But one thing I have to say, so you said you weren't a good athlete, so you weren't in the NFL. Because that's gonna affect my vote, Keith. I don't know. I thought you were a professional athlete. I don't know about now.
No, I should have maybe tried out as a kicker, but I can't even kick a football straight. But I should say that as much as I'm a sports guy, I'm a believer in whatever your passion is. So if you like music, if you like dance, if you like art, or if you like speech and debate, I'm all for that in high school. That it's important to supplement the academic side with co-curricular things. And so, if I'm fortunate enough to be Lieutenant Governor, that I want to incorporate that or make sure that that's not lost, not just sports, but any other extracurricular or after-school activity you're interested in, because it also keeps you out of trouble, quite frankly.
Especially in small towns like Hilo,
exactly,
where I'm from.
Yes, if you give kids too much time, they're going to get in mischief. That's just the way teenagers are.
Yeah.
So I'm a big proponent of promoting all after-school activities. And then one day before I die, I want to start public school, middle school sports. I think every other state has that. And we all were middle schoolers at one time. That's actually the more challenging, formative time of your life for kids than even high school. A lot of kids go down the wrong path in middle school already for various, middle school, that's when your hormones kick in, you're kind of a child, but becoming an adult, and your brain is just not functioning fully yet. And so many high school coaches and principals will tell you middle school athletics and after school activities is almost more important than in high school, because you might lose kids before they even get to high school without structure after school.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it gives people a role model at an early age to hopefully steer them on the right track. Did you have any role models or people you looked up to growing up?
Well, my Hanai family, probably my best friend who's my age, who's the reason I got Hanai, Chris Kobayashi. He was probably my role model.
To him.
He was, shout out to him. And my son is named after Chris.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, because he was different. He was actually a star athlete. He played football, basketball, baseball. Everybody loved him. He was good at whatever he tried in sports, but yet he was humble, and he helped take me into his family. He didn't have to. Yeah. I provided little value to him. I was more a burden, if anything.
You're the fifth child.
Yeah, and I was the fifth wheel, in a lot of ways. But he was probably my role model, and his parents who took me in as well.
You almost could have been like the blind side.
Almost, but I
so
was
close.
I'm not. Yeah. I'm half the guy's size and half his athleticism. Yeah. I wish.
Yeah. So it sounds like he and his family just made your life. You sound very grateful to them. Like without them, like where do you think you'd be?
I don't know, but they certainly changed my life trajectory for the better, and that, as I said earlier, is my inspiration for helping other people, who are less fortunate. And we, my wife and I, have taken in high school athletes into our families and lived with us from time to time, including, we're proud of her, so I'll mention her by name, Kale Adolfo from Molokai High School.
Oh, nice.
She ended up playing football, not football, although she's a good athlete, basketball and volleyball at the University of Hawaii.
Nice.
But from 9th grade through the end of her high school career, she lived with us in the summers because there's way more opportunities on Oʻahu to compete and get better in volleyball and basketball. And so, that was one of our small ways of paying it forward. I mean, unlike me, she didn't have any family situation. She has great parents, but again, the opportunities are far greater on Oʻahu than living on Molokai in the summers. And so, and we did it because we wanted to, and we benefited. I don't want to make like it was a big sacrifice, because we grew from that as well. Anytime you can help someone and they appreciate it and they make the most of the opportunity, that's a price you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah.
Kind of, self-satisfaction.
Yeah, it's weird how giving can sometimes be a selfish thing, right? Because it makes you feel good. There's a lot of self-interest in that. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, and Kale has gone on. She just got married. Oh, nice. She's a teacher on Molokai at the intermediate school. She's the boys basketball varsity head coach.
Oh, wow. Boy, that's cool.
Yes. And she's doing well. So that makes my wife Bonnie and I feel good that she's now mentoring people younger than her and being a good role model and example.
It's a chain reaction, You never know how much you're going to impact somebody's life, and, you can just keep passing it on, paying it forward. That's so important in life.
For sure. Yeah. And that's, to me, what makes Hawaii special, because we're very generous, we're very giving, to me, more than on the continent, where there's more a transactional nature. I'll help you, but what are you going to give me in return?
What do I get in return?
Yes, but it's foundational. It's the aloha spirit. It's the culture where you give without expectation of anything in return, and that's what makes Hawaii special. And to me, that's the only way we can be successful in Hawaii, because we don't have the resources on the continent of money or facilities or just job opportunities. We all kind of have to help each other to move forward collectively as a society.
Yeah, it's the only way to do it. Kako, all of us included. Yeah, let's 100%. Do it. Yeah, I love that. I love that you said that. So we're gonna get into you running for lieutenant governor. But before you did that, you have a little bit experience because you ran for mayor a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And before we get into that, I want to know about your time with CPB, Central Pacific Bank. You're the executive director at Central Pacific Bank Foundation, which is like their nonprofit arm, right?
Yeah.
Could you explain to us what that is and what do you do specifically?
So I'm in charge of their foundation, their nonprofit arm, and it's a great job because it involves giving back to the community. I get to help choose where money goes.
Oh, really?
Across the state.
Give us some money then.
Hey, if you have a nonprofit, I'll consider it. So it's so the Central Pacific Bank, like all foundations, feel an obligation to give back to the community, that a bank is only successful as the people they serve. And so, it's important to have a vibrant, successful community in order to be a successful bank. And also it's a duty really of larger companies who are fortunate enough to have the resources to give back to the community. So some of the areas we focus on at Central Pacific Bank are our youth, are certainly people who are disadvantaged, smaller owned businesses, women, and education. And so it's actually a great job. I can't complain because I'm helping decide where money goes in the community. And we funded various things, like recently we partnered with some other foundations to buy athletic buses for Lanai and Molokai high schools. Their resources are much more limited on smaller islands like those. They needed new buses. The state didn't have the money to provide for new buses, so we did that. Cocoa Crater Stairs. If anyone has hiked it, they know that the stairs were run down and dangerous. So we partnered with the nonprofit in charge of the stairs, the Coconut Coalition, and we gave several tens of thousands of dollars. They matched it, and in less than a year's time, the stairs have been renovated.
It's nice.
It's really nice. It's night and day.
Still not fun though.
It's still brutal.
It's still brutal.
And I've been doing it because they approached me even when I was running for mayor before I worked at CPB. Like, hey, you seem like a guy who can help us raise money. Can you help us? And I said, sure, I'll help you. And I never hiked the stairs before, but I told myself, well, if I want to support them and ask people to give money, someone's going to ask me one day, well, did you even hike it? Like, what are the conditions of the stairs? So I did it, and I almost died the first time, but now it's become a routine. But to your point, I asked some of the veterans that go up the stairs and down, have done it for years. I said, does it ever get easier where it's not that hard? And I said, never. It's painful, and almost every time I do it, I try to do it once or twice a week. Almost every time I tell myself, why are you doing this? This is crazy. Because it is, as you can, only people who have done it know.
It's not a fun hike.
It's not.
If people say they're doing coconut, it's because they want to feel pain.
Yeah, you have to almost be.
It's a workout. It's not a hike. It's a workout.
That's a good way to talk about it, because it's not Manoa Falls or
Makapu Lighthouse.
Paved. It's paved, or Diamond Head, which is paved and easy, and a beautiful lookout afterwards. Like you said, it's a better way of saying it. It's a workout.
It's a workout.
There's nothing scenic up on the way up there. It's all bushes and dirt.
Yeah.
The top is nice, but you're too tired to enjoy it.
And the wind feels good when you get up there.
That to help you cool down. See,
Too bad we can't just roll down or just zip line down. Can you work, if you're a lieutenant governor, would you create a zip line from the top of Coconut to Coco Marina?
I've half joked to people about doing that, because that would be a tourist attraction or even a local attraction.
I would pay to get that. I would pay probably $10 max to get a quick ride down there.
So Kamaka, the first time I did it, I and before they renovated, I don't know if you know, it was super dangerous. I was almost crawling up the stairs to the last 100 steps or so. And then I was relieved. I almost thought I was going to die of a heart attack. And then after 5 minutes, I realized, oh my goodness, now I got to go back down.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
And down's harder because it hurts your knees.
It hurts your knees, and if you fall, you can get seriously injured. So that's another project CPB Foundation has done. But, you know, we've done bigger projects like donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Girl Scouts. They have a new STEM center out in the north in the Pupukea region. We've helped during the COVID crisis small businesses by matching. If you go to a small business and order takeout, we match dollar for dollar and paid the restaurant money. And so that we donated several hundreds of thousands of dollars to that as well. So we run the gamut, but we just try to make the community a better place.
Yeah, that's what I loved about CPB because I worked with them too. I helped with the Shaka program, and even when they started the tide pools at the Central Pacific Bank in not far from here.
Right.
And we had a booth for Hawaiiverse where we sold some of our local products too. So I love CPB and you know the people working there, and I really it is the bank for small businesses. Yeah.
Yes, it is, and younger people too. With
the whole
Shaka,
digital marketing.
The Hawaii's first all digital checking account.
Yeah,
where you don't even have to go to the bank. You just sign up on your phone.
Yeah. Go check out Shaka by CPB. Not an ad. And then you got Chris Moore as the face of it. She's awesome. I run into her every now and then. Definitely want her on the podcast, Chris. If you're after you win a couple more world titles, just hop over here. Yeah, drop in over here.
She'd be a great guest.
Yeah. She's busy though. She's really busy. Yeah. All right. So yeah, great work you're doing with CPB. So mahalo for that. So prior to that, you're planning, or you ran for mayor of Hawaii, right? And what was the aftermath of that? Because you didn't win. So what was that like for you? And like, what do you think you went wrong? What do you think you did right? And how do you think you will succeed now when running for lieutenant governor?
So that was my first time running for office, and it was a very crowded field. There were 15 candidates, and of course, there was disappointment in not ultimately winning, but I was able to advance to the general election out of a very crowded field to reach the top two. So that to me was obviously a success to beat very experienced politicians along the way. And interestingly enough, the top two candidates in the mayor's race, Rick Blangiardi and myself, were the two first-time candidates, two non-politicians. And I think there's a theme there, and we can even talk about it in this upcoming, not only my race, but the other races, that clearly there's a movement for change, for new people, for new leadership. So what I took from there is that what I thought going into the race, people want change. They're tired of the same old people running for office and leading our state. In terms of losing the general election, I mean, the people chose current Mayor Blangiardi, and that's just like in sports. That's life. I wish him well. It's not an easy job. He's had to be mayor during a pandemic. It would have been hard for me, and so I give him credit for doing the best he could under the circumstances. In terms of what I do differently, I'm not sure. I mean, it just comes down to working hard, trying to get your message across. In the end, he probably had a little more financial resources than me to get his message across, and he ultimately won, and we have to respect that, just like in sports, and support whoever wins the election. Same with mine. If I'm lucky enough to win, I hope my opponents support me, and vice versa.
Do you think it was kind of a blessing in disguise you didn't win, because you would have had to deal with the whole pandemic where nobody could win during that? Any person in office at that time, you did the best, but you had so many people got backlash for everything they did. Governor Ige, Lieutenant Governor Josh Green. Wrong, damned if I do, damned if I don't, right?
Yes. So yeah, I mean there is an element of that be careful what you wish for because you might get it. And so my wife used to tell me that every single day. She said, "Aren't you glad you're not the mayor? You're so lucky you're not the mayor." You know, during the heat of the crisis, especially the mask mandates and the vaccination requirements for county employees. So yes, there's an element of good fortune, if you will, for me personally. You know, obviously, if I won, I would approach that job 100%, you know, with passion. But, you know, to your point, I don't care who won that race or who became mayor or who was governor at the time. They were in an impossible situation, and so, you know, in the long run, that might have been a blessing to not have won. Now, if I didn't advance to the general and finish in the top 2, yeah, that would have been much more disappointing. But there is some consolation in being the runner-up in such a hotly contested race and running for such a high office for the first time. You know, lots of people, most people didn't give me a shot at winning. Because even Mayor Blangiardi, he was a first-time candidate, but he was on TV a lot.
Yeah,
he's a seasoned media executive. Right, so even he had some advantages. Again, no excuses. That is what it is. You know, he won fair and square, but, you know, I had a longer road to hold to win, and to be able to advance to the general, I thought spoke well of my campaign and my supporters who got me to that point.
Yeah, you had, if this was Vegas odds, you would have had a really high odds. I don't know.
Yeah.
Low odds?
High odds.
High odds.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, so it sounds like you gained a lot of experience just from that alone, and you actually did very well, which is impressive for somebody who, like you said, never ran a political campaign in your life. But now you're running for lieutenant governor, and you kind of explained, you know, your reason why, or kind of, you know, the catalyst that made you, you know, want to support Hawaii from a higher position. But you want to just share a little bit more why lieutenant governor, and I'm curious, why lieutenant governor over governor? What's the difference? Yeah.
Right. So, you know, in a nutshell, I'm running for lieutenant governor because we still need change. I'm the only candidate in the race that's not a career politician or a lobbyist. I'm the only candidate in the lieutenant governor's race that has executive leadership experience on a statewide basis. The lieutenant governor is a statewide position, and I'm the only one that has that kind of experience to lead large, complex statewide organizations. I'm also the only candidate that has been out in the communities throughout my entire career, largely in the public service realm. So to me, this would be a continuation of working in the communities directly, working with them, using the trust that I've gained with them to fight for them and find solutions to the complex issues that our state is facing. And frankly, you know, the reason I'm running, the reason there's a lot of other candidates running for the first time, not only on the Democratic side, but on the Republican side, and gaining traction and creating a movement in many cases, because the public is tired of the same politicians, and our state is not moving forward. I have a 21-year-old son. After college, we want him to eventually come back to Hawaii to live and be able to work and raise a family of his own. But right now, that's not possible for the vast majority of our younger generation. And that upsets me, because we've talked about this for decades, about making Hawaii more affordable, building more affordable housing. But it's only getting worse. And we see it in the numbers, Kamaka. People in your generation are moving out of state in record numbers, because what 20 or 30-year-old or 40 or 50-year-old can afford a $1.1 million house? I mean,
that's the median price.
The median price right now. Condos are close to $600,000. The rent for a one-bedroom apartment in urban Honolulu is $2,000 a month. It's the same in Kona. It's the same on Maui and Kihei. That's unsustainable. for people. And if we don't make any major changes now, we're going to lose an entire younger generation of people, and that's a shame. Now, let me add that not only are younger people in Hawaii being affected by the lack of affordable housing, just the high cost of living in Hawaii in general, our kupuna are moving out of state in record numbers because they're similar in situation to our younger people in that, well, they're on fixed income, they're retired. They, they're when rent is increased, when gas prices increase, when food prices increase, when healthcare costs increase, they don't have a large reserve to dip into. So now they're being priced out of Hawaii, and that's tragic. That's outrageous almost, that our kupuna now, who worked hard to raise a family, to provide for them, now want to enjoy, their retirement life here in Hawaii, can't because they have to move away. Another reason kupuna tell me they're moving out is because they're the only ones left in some cases. Their kids and grandkids are living in Vegas. They're living in Arizona. They're living in Utah. They're in Washington State. They're in California. And so they don't want to be here in Hawaii by themselves. So they're being forced to move to the continent because their family's not here. So, it's a really dire situation. We've given our elected officials how many chances. It's just time for new people in office to actually fight for the underdogs and working families across the state.
Yeah, awesome. And we have some more questions in our Instagram, a question portion of this. So we'll talk about affordable housing and all that. But I know one of your things that you like to do. I don't know. You probably wouldn't hear one of the moderators in a debate say one of the things you do, right? Yeah. It's probably a little bit more professional. But one of the things that you want to do is diversify the economy.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what you mean by diversify the economy. Is that maybe cannabis? Is it maybe making gambling legal in Hawaii? Like, what is that? What are your thoughts?
So before we even get to diversifying the economy, what I've been telling people on the campaign trail and even the Kupuna Council on the Leeward Coast that I just spoke to earlier today, that resonates with every group that I've spoken to. Before we can even talk about how we're going to attack housing, how we're going to address, the dependency on tourism, is we have to clean up the corruption in politics, especially in the legislature. Because if we don't have the right people in office, they're not going to make the right decision. Doesn't matter what great ideas we have. If they're in the back pockets of special interest groups or criminals who have been caught with trying to bribe public officials, we're never going to move forward. So I'm the only candidate in the lieutenant governor's race that's pushing for true campaign reform, true cleaning up of corruption. First, we need term limits. Secondly, we need to ban fundraising during the legislative session. We need to remove conflicts of interest that exist with our legislators, where, for example, they're working on the side for a big business who brings issues before the legislature, and that legislature later votes on that issue. I mean, that's wrong, and that shouldn't be happening anymore.
Is it technically legal, though, because they find some sort of loophole to do it? Is it more just morally wrong, or is it actually illegal?
There's ways around it where you can still vote on issues involving your employer, which that sounds crazy to your listeners that it's allowed to happen, but it happens.
Yeah.
We need to eliminate that. And fourth, we need to enforce sunshine laws on our legislators. They meet in private a lot of times. And when they go out in public and we see the public access channels where they're voting, they've already decided behind closed doors. The vote is mere
this is for show,
window dressing.
Yeah.
Right. We need to hold them accountable. They need to make their discussions in public. So I'm the only candidate, again, that has a plan to clean up that kind of corruption and the conflicts of interest that are really hurting the decisions being made by the legislature today. Now, going back to diversifying the economy, the pandemic made clear that we're so dependent on tourism. And just like affordable housing, we've talked about diversifying the economy, heck, before you were probably even born, Kamaka. And sounding like a broken record, that's why we need new leadership. That's why we need term limits. We can't keep electing or having the same people in office year after year. During the pandemic, tourism came to a standstill. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people lost their jobs. They were without income for months, if not a year or more, especially those in the tourism industry. So that makes crystal clear we need to have other industries so that if we have another situation where tourism is impacted, it doesn't hurt us as severely. So one area you touched on is agriculture. We have some of the best land in the world with which to grow crops. We can grow crops to eliminate our dependency on out-of-state food. So that helps because we know during the pandemic in the early stages, there were a lot of grocery store shelves empty.
Yeah.
Scary. So that'll help. It'll also provide more jobs for local farmers and people related to the farming industry. And then third, because of our fertile land and where we're situated in the world, we can grow high value crops that can be exported if necessary to out of state for a good profit. We can also look at hemp. We can talk about, if we have time, my thoughts on marijuana and whether or not we should legalize it from a recreational basis. But if we do, that's a very profitable crop. That if it ever becomes legal, we'd be foolish not to jump on it. Two other industries that come to mind: renewable energy. Just like agriculture, we are in one of the best places in the world to generate our own energy. We should not be dependent on fossil fuels anymore. We have wind, solar, geothermal, hydro, and I'm missing one or two, but we have
a lot.
We have a lot. And so, we need to stop importing something like $2 billion, I think it's more, of oil a year, which is also harmful for the environment, by the way. And so let's look at renewable energy as an industry. I view that as an industry that can also create higher paying jobs. We should be the world leader in teaching everyone else how to create a 100% renewable energy society. Yes.
What do you think is stopping us from doing that? Because I always thought, growing up, and when I leave to other places, when I think back of home over here in Hawaii, we have these amazing lands, agricultural lands.
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing anything with it? Why are we only sending pineapples?
Yeah. So part of it is, as I said earlier, poor leadership, lack of vision, and just a few key companies and individuals in Hawaii who control the decisions of the whole state.
Is it because they want to have a monopoly on certain things?
I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. And who's screwed in the end? It's working families.
Yeah. It's us.
Yes.
People. It's Jordan right here sitting, doing the videography for us.
Yes. And so we need to break that cycle of just a few key businesses and people controlling all of the decisions in the state. And we need legislators who will stand up to these big businesses and individuals to fight for what's right and do what they were supposed to do when they were elected. And that's work for the working families across the state, not the entitled big business.
Yeah. It's almost like working for the 99% instead of the 1%.
No question. We're losing the middle class, by the way. I mean, I got to throw that in.
Well, middle class is $1.2 million.
Yeah.
Which isn't...
That's not middle class.
That doesn't sound like middle class.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're becoming a society like a lot of third world countries where there's the 5% elite and the 95% that are working in largely service-based or hospitality-based industries.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because I lived in Madagascar for 3 years, one of the poorest countries in the world, which means one of the most corrupt countries in the world. There's a direct correlations to that. And a lot of places like that, they don't want a middle class because they want this discrepancy of that 1 to 5%, the elites, the politicians, the people at the highest level, and then people who are begging on the street, and they want to keep that gap between them.
and suppress
Yeah.
education
Yeah.
and knowledge.
Exactly.
No
Knowledge,
question.
education is huge. Yeah.
We're not doing it as blatantly in Hawaii as
Yes,
Madagascar,
but
but
I
indirectly.
I see
and that's
things
that's
that are
what
similar,
happened.
which is crazy to me because I lived in a developing country, and it's crazy, especially during the pandemic, when I see things happening here that I can relate to. People say a third world country, a developing country. That's crazy to me. How we're in a developed nation, developed place, but we're acting like a third world country.
So, Kamaka, we're becoming what Hawaii was in pre-1950s when there was a revolution in terms of voting, where the big five companies, they called them, mainland-owned companies, controlled the state. We're becoming like that again. But how did that domination and monopoly get broken? By voting. And I know people are disillusioned. They think their vote doesn't matter. But trust me, everyone's vote matters. Less than half the people, adults who are eligible to vote in Hawaii, vote. Can you imagine if everyone voted? You can make a difference. You can bring about change. So those in power in Hawaii want the voter turnout low. They want people to think their vote doesn't matter. But I'm telling you, it does. I mean, there's so many groups that can benefit from a higher voter turnout, but one of them is Native Hawaiians. If they vote in mass or whatever that term is, they can change the trajectory of themselves and Hawaii in general. Don't fall or succumb to the conventional wisdom or the power elites message that your vote doesn't count, because it does. They want you to think that, but it does matter. I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
And we have no excuse to vote people have no excuse when it comes to voting in Hawaii now. First of all, it's mail-in. The ballot gets mailed to you. You fill it out, and you put it in an envelope, and you send it back. Even the postage is covered. You can't even say, I don't want to pay for a stamp. And you don't have to leave your house. You don't have to go to a polling booth. And you have 3 weeks to vote. It's not like in the old days where you only one day you had to go between 8 and 4. You had you had to work that Saturday, or you had to watch your kids, or you got sick, or you're out of town, or whatever. There's no excuse now to in terms of whether you vote or not. And everyone needs to vote. Even registering to vote, you can vote. You can register on your smartphone in less than 5 minutes, and that's not hard. And so, if you really want to make change, if you hate the people in power and not happy with them, you gotta vote.
Yeah, no vote, no grumble.
That's right.
Yeah, I was one of those people. I voted for the first time 29. I voted for the first time 2 years ago, I think. Whenever Anela helped me do some campaigning on social media. Yeah, I was always just, I want to stay away from politics. My vote doesn't matter. I had that mindset. But, everything coming to light in the last 2 years, I'm just like, okay, I have to do something. Even if, this doesn't matter, this doesn't make a difference. Like, my vote alone won't make a difference. But 50,000 other people in my age group, maybe that will make a difference. If we all come together and we do it collectively, we do it as a kako thing, it will make a difference.
So here's another stat that your audience, which I tend to believe is on the younger side, needs to keep in mind. Right now in Hawaii, 70% of the voters who actually vote in the election are 50 years and older. So, and they're not 70% of the population. But my point is, everyone 49 and younger, if they voted, they need to vote. It's alarming. So basically, the older generation is deciding who's in office.
Yeah.
And of course, they're entitled to their say, but so are younger people, but we're letting them make the call, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so, to me, that's a staggering statistic as to how older people decide who gets elected.
Yeah, and they're voting for the same people who are still in office because there's no term limit. It's all connected.
Right. And let's talk about term limits real quick. So,
and then we'll get into Instagram questions.
Okay, sure. So, term limits, there are people in office now who don't want term limits, of course, because the self-interest, they want to stay in power as long as they can. Politics was never intended, it's called public service, at least in theory, and it was never intended to be a full-time, long-term job, where you're a politician your whole life and you financially benefit from it. So that's why I support term limits, because the longer you stay in it, you lose touch with working families, you feel entitled in a lot of cases, and you just get power hungry. So let's limit it to 2 4-year terms if we can. And we already have that in Hawaii. The mayors are all term limited. City council members are limited to 2 4-year terms. Governor and lieutenant governor, 2 4-year terms. Only the legislature doesn't have term limits. So my point is, we already have term limits in Hawaii, and it seems to be working fine. I haven't heard anyone say we need to remove term limits. Oh, the governors and the mayors, they should be, allowed to stay in office forever. I mean, no one is saying that. So the world will not come to an end if legislators are held to the same standard that the mayors and governors and lieutenant governors are held.
Yeah, I think term limits are good because from at least the 29 years I've lived, it's always people can't wait till the next governor comes because, it's like they vote for somebody. It's the same cycle, right? They vote for somebody. They're like, this person will bring change.
Right.
They end up hating the person, complaining. Oh, this next person will do it. Same thing. Complaining. It's like, when's the next guy going to come? Or when will this governor be out of here?
Right.
It's the same thing that always happens.
Right, and then there will be some who say 8 years is too much, as it is. Like, even that's too long.
Yeah.
So I really think term limits will be a game changer.
Yeah. Aloha Hawaiiverse podcast listeners. This episode is brought to you by Farmers Market Hawaii, a brand with integrity-based cultural designs inspired by the life of Hawaii and its history. They're one of the biggest streetwear brands in Hawaii. You love them. I love them. Their hats are awesome. Their clothes are awesome. It's always so meaningful wearing something from Farmers Market Hawaii. Shout out to Keone, the owner of it. He's amazing, doing awesome things for the community. Make sure you support them. Mahalo to them for sponsoring this episode. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast. Okay, so let's get into Instagram questions because we got some good ones, okay? We're going to start getting into the heavier stuff, okay? All right, so this one comes from Nicole Sandri. She wants to know, what did he learn from his first mayoral run and what has he done to earn the people's trust?
So we kind of touched upon it earlier. I learned, or it was validated that people do want change, that the 2 first-time candidates advanced to the general election. In hindsight, you can always do better, and so perhaps getting out there, communicating even more to the public about who I am and what I was going to do to eliminate some of the perceptions people may have of you or of me in the previous race, and further explain what I've done throughout my career in terms of public service and helping the community. That's probably one thing you can always do a better job of communicating who you are and what you're about. I also think, again, it was tough in the general election. I mean, my opponent had a lot of money, and so it's tough when they can be out there more often. And so I'm a big proponent of, as I said, campaign reform, and I like the public financing aspect where everyone gets the same amount to spend in a campaign, and that you don't have to fundraise. But overall, I thought we did a pretty good job advancing to the general election, and so it's just a matter of just getting the word out more and more. You can never communicate it enough. Yeah. That's what I learned from the mayor's race.
That's interesting because that really evens the playing field. Like, hey, everybody gets $250,000. You do the most you can do with this, right?
Right.
That's really interesting. I mean, that's how competitions work, right?
Right. Well, okay, here's another thing I learned from the mayor's race that the old days, far before you were born or when you were really young, it was like just go on TV. And TV is still an important medium to get your message across in politics. But there's so many ways people get their information now about political races. And so you have to be diverse and nimble. And that's like I learned my lesson from the mayor's race, where my campaign is advertising much more on digital media, like through Instagram and Facebook ads, as opposed to just focusing on TV and newspaper.
Which is the older crowd,
Yes.
which is the majority of voters in Hawaii, yeah.
Right. So that's why you still have to do that, the TV, newspaper, and to an extent radio. But the social media is a game changer now because...
Especially with podcasts.
It's instantaneous information, and it's cheaper and more costly. It's more efficient in a way.
Yeah, I'm only going to charge you like $10,000 after this. Don't even worry. I'll send the invoice to Anela.
That's a bargain.
Yeah, it's so cheap.
For the millions of viewers you got.
Yeah, 100 million, hundreds of millions, yeah.
So I guess that's another main takeaway from the mayor's race is that there's so many different ways to communicate, and you can actually target. As you pointed out, you've seen some of my ads on Google and whatnot when you're going online and.
Yeah, I see it on YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube, and so many people tell me that.
Yeah.
And so you just can't focus on TV and newspaper for the younger audience. But having said that, there's older people that go on Instagram and Facebook as well. So you're reaching them too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I don't know if you touched upon this yet, but how do you think you can earn people's trust?
Well, you have to walk the walk. And so, throughout my career, I've always tried to lead by example and show through your actions that what you're doing is pure and genuine and not for personal gain. And I think I've largely succeeded in that way. Wherever I've worked, whether it's at the Hawaii High School Athletic Association, to now at the Central Pacific Bank Foundation, you have to show people that you're acting in the greater good, for the greater good of the community. And like I said, that's a constant effort to keep, because we live in such a skeptical, cynical society, especially when it comes to politicians. But as I said, I've worked hard to earn people's trust that whatever I do is for the greater good of the community and not for myself. And so, my wife and I have, again, try to show that, whether it's housing people to live with us so that they can further their academic and athletic careers, whether it's donating a new scoreboard to Roosevelt High School when they were renovating their football field and their track and rebuilding it. We live in the area. We wanted to give back to the public school in our area. We live in Paoa, to just show that it's not just me asking people to donate money, because I was in charge of the fundraising campaign to build, renovate the football field and the track at Roosevelt. And we felt if I'm going to ask other people for money, we need to contribute our own money and to show that we're committed to the project. And so that's the ways you build trust. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and you just have to keep being consistent and true to your word.
Yeah. How do you think you can change, or we just we can change people's minds who think all politicians are corrupt, anybody running for office is corrupt? Because I'm gonna be honest, I kind of have that mindset too, where I'm just like, career politician, you're corrupt. Or if you're going into politics, maybe you're not corrupt, but there's a lot of temptation. Maybe you will fall into some sort of corruption. Like so many people think that. So that's why the trust is so low, especially with the last couple of years. Like, is it more so you gaining their trust, or you changing their mind? And how do we do that?
I think it's both, and that's why we need to elect more newer candidates need to run. And we need to get new people into office. That's how you build trust. That's how you gain trust. You also need to have term limits. So if you know you're going to be in office only for 8 years, then you don't have time to pad your pocketbook, with high paid side jobs outside of the legislative session. And so, there's we need everyone to vote. I can't emphasize that. We need to elect new people into office. We need to impose term limits. We need to restructure how fundraising is done, where the incumbent has such a huge advantage. And that's why people don't run against incumbents. People give up and don't try to get into public office because they feel that they don't have a fighting chance to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. This one is a controversial topic that's been going on for how many years? Hana.eno808 wants to know, what are your thoughts on TMT? You going to help us or what?
I'm not sure what Hana means, but I can guess.
Hana ino actually in Hawaii means to make trouble.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's a funny handle. Instagram.
So here's my position on TMT. On the one hand, if you can further human discovery, you can further knowledge, you can create an industry with a multitude of high-paying jobs on Hawaii Island, when you can be the world leader in an important field, a field that was important to Native Hawaiians. Their roots are in wayfaring and discovery. That's how they ended up here in the Hawaiian Islands. You need to really look at something like TMT. On the other hand, TMT has been the flashpoint, perhaps the straw that broke the camel's back as far as Native Hawaiians have been concerned, and they're right to a large extent. They have been disrespected. They have been taken advantage of, so to speak, for decades, and nothing's really been done. Just like politicians in general, like I said, there's a lot of lip service about, we have to help the Native Hawaiians. They've been wrong, that we need to make it right. Well, Native Hawaiians in particular, there are also non-Native Hawaiians who are against TMT, are finally said enough is enough. We're going to stand our ground. And so I see their point as well. Where I come to is that I support constructing TMT, but at the same time addressing the Native. We can't do one or the other. We also have to address the Native Hawaiian rights, the grievances that have been raised. Let's talk about all of them, not only TMT, but Makua Valley, Pohakuloa, water rights. I mean, there's so many issues. And what I tell my Native Hawaiian friends, or just people in general who are leaning against building TMT, it's that the Native Hawaiian situation doesn't end if you block TMT. It doesn't all become better, So yes, I understand why you're against TMT for a multitude of reasons, but we need to look beyond that as well. That you may win a victory in the end. Who knows how it's going to play out, and block TMT, but that's not going to make everything right.
It's like you win a battle, but you lose the war.
Right. You still got the issues I talked about that are important to Native Hawaiians, Makua Valley, Pohakuloa, water rights, or the fact that there's still almost 30,000 people on the DHHL waiting list, that many of whom are dying before they have a chance to own a home on Hawaiian homelands. And so that's my take on the TMT issue.
Okay. So you think there has to be some sort of compromise instead of just like we can build TMT. Sorry, you guys just gotta accept it, or not build TMT and be like, who cares about the future or whatever science.
Right. So my concern is if TMT is halted or stopped, then that's an excuse for elected officials and others to say, okay, well, we didn't build TMT. Okay, now everything's fine. Well, it's not fine.
Yeah.
There's Native Hawaiians still have issues in terms of educational advancement, especially on the Leeward Coast or on Hawaii Island in the Ka'u Keao Pahoa region. That's not going to go away. Or the fact, again, that there's 30,000 Native Hawaiians who are on the DHHL waiting list. Native Hawaiians are incarcerated at a higher rate than other groups. That's not going to go away by blocking TMT. And so I really feel we can do both. And if TMT is ultimately built on Mauna Kea, then let's decommission some of those telescopes and take them down. I mean, at least to show good faith and to at least not clutter Mauna Kea with a multitude of telescopes. If we're going to have the best telescope in the world, then do we really need all of these other telescopes on Mauna Kea?
Yeah.
Let's also talk about the community benefits package, because there's a lot of giant corporations and universities that are going to benefit from TMT. I know there's been a community benefits package that's been talked about for Hawaii Island residents. It should probably be increased, and so that, again, it's not just it's a win-win. Even telescopic viewing time.
Yeah.
Let's provide more for college age, high school, and students and below on Hawaii Island or across the state, for that matter. So there needs to be much more give and take and compromise.
But there's no way to make everybody happy. Because you could say, hey, every resident's gonna get a $2,000 check and all these benefits, whatever. We're gonna have all these advancements, but there's still gonna be people who are like, no, it's sacred land. This is desecration to land. This is disrespect to our culture. Are those people like too far gone to convince?
You're right that if TMT is built or if TMT is not built, there's going to be unhappy people on either side. But that's part of being a leader, is you take a position and you explain it and you try to make the best of it and try to meet people halfway. But sometimes you just have to make a call. And that's another problem I see in our state, is that our leaders can be too indecisive. That's worse than actually making a decision. Like, to not know where you are, and then everybody's unhappy because you're not making a decision. Like, make a call and go with it.
Yeah, I'd rather somebody be direct and blunt rather than be more passive and like, what's your stance? I don't know. Like, I'll let you know in 2 years.
Right, and hope it goes away. That's to me
and just turn
another mindset of our elected officials that needs to go away. That we're the legislature and other government bodies are like, they don't like to make hard decisions and they like to kick that can down the road. So one easy way out in the short term is let's form a task force, or let's do a study, and it's going to take a couple years, and then you kind of hope everyone forgets about it and it goes away. But it's clear TMT is not going to go away. That we need to address it. I guess that's the bottom line, is let's make a call on it ultimately. Whether you're for it or against it, government just needs to make a call so we all know where we stand moving forward.
So either people can pick up their arms or leave it on the side. So okay, that's interesting. Mahalo for being honest about that. Okay, next question. I really want to talk about this question because it's a huge issue, the biggest issue we have in Hawaii. Oh, hi, my name is Josh, says, how will he address housing affordability, specifically making it so locals can still afford to live in Hawaii?
By going across the state, and even before I ran for office, the biggest issue far and away for working families, for younger people, is the high cost of living. Hawaii has simply become unaffordable for the vast majority of people. The biggest expense for most people is housing. People can't afford housing, and so we need to address it. This is yet another issue that just keeps getting kicked down the road, and that's why we need new people in office. The affordable housing crisis has been in Hawaii for over 50 years, but it's worse than ever. There's approximately 65,000 units that need to be built statewide to meet demand, and until we make inroads, we're going to keep losing younger families in particular to the U.S. continent, and otherwise we're going to not have a younger generation at this point.
We're going to have a 9th, 10th, 11th island.
Exactly. Nevada, Arizona, and Utah. Basically. Well, and I mean, it's my understanding there's more Native Hawaiians that live out of Hawaii than in Hawaii or close.
I would like to see a statistic on that because I know there's, like you said, it's record highs. I know there's a statistic saying like these days younger kids are not living in Hawaii more than ever. I don't know if it's like 60% or something.
Yes.
My friend's dad sent it to me.
And that more are being born out of state than here, those with Native Hawaiian.
Yeah, which sucks because then they grow up away from the culture where you can't have the local or the Hawaiian culture. You can have it other place, but not the same where you can have it here, where you have Hawaiian speaking communities, you have the Ohana culture, you have people taking you in, acting, letting you cross the road and throwing up the shock instead of honking the horn,
Exactly.
That doesn't happen everywhere.
No, it doesn't. And so I'm the only candidate in the lieutenant governor's race that has a comprehensive housing for all plan, and I'm committed to working with the next governor, whoever it may be, to attack the affordable housing issue because we have to. There's tons of issues. We got homelessness and a lot of other issues, lack of a diverse economy, but we need to build more affordable housing. I have a housing for all plan that details how we need to address that. First, we need to stop building houses for offshore investors. We need to focus on housing for local residents. Enough of these luxury developments. Let's focus on housing for local people. Let's enforce the illegal vacation rental law and bring that back into the inventory. There's tens of thousands of illegal vacation rentals across the state, not just Oahu, but Maui and Kauai and Hawaii Island. Let's bring that back into the market. That alone will help with the housing shortage. We won't eliminate it, but it'll help. Let's also tax these vacant investor units. You got these gazillionaires buying, luxury condos in Kaka'ako and elsewhere, where they live in it. They stay. It's a third or fourth home for them.
Yeah.
And they stay 2 weeks out of the year.
Yeah.
Well, they need to be taxed because that's a vacant unit that could be used for housing for someone else. That's local. Other places like Vancouver have implemented it, and in my view, these people who can afford a third or fourth vacation home, they can definitely afford an assessment on their property every month that they leave it empty. Government needs to build more infrastructure. That's another problem or crisis here in Hawaii, that there is ample land to build homes on, but there isn't the infrastructure. So we need to focus on using government funds, federal stimulus money that's come in for infrastructure to build sewer, water, utilities, so that developers can come right in and start building the housing that we badly need. We also have to be creative and build all levels of housing. So, your generation, Kamaka, everyone, of course, would love to buy a home or a condo, but that's just a pipe dream that's unattainable in their minds, or will take decades to get to that point. We need affordable rentals for your generation.
So expensive.
It's nuts.
$2,000.
Or one
bedroom. What? $1,000 something for a studio. Utilities not included.
Exactly.
Crazy. So that's why a lot of us live with our families here in Hawaii.
Yes, because out of necessity.
Yeah.
So we need to not just build.
Shout out to you, Grandma. Woo, love you.
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness for family members that can help you, ease the rental crunch that you're facing. So we need to build more affordable rentals. Another program I'd like to see the state implement is helping with the down payment, because that's the biggest hurdle.
As like people. A loan?
Or it's either a no interest loan, or in some cases a subsidy. Because before people can even think of buying, and getting a mortgage for a $1.1 million home, they can't afford the down payment. Let's say a down payment, standard terms is 20%. So 20% of $1.1 million is $220,000. What local couple with 2 kids can ever save enough for the down payment, $220,000, when you have all these other expenses that you're worried about. And then you finally get the down payment. Oh, and then, well, by the way, your mortgage is going to be $5,000-$6,000 a month. That's, again, crazy, unsustainable. So helping with the down payment is a step. But first, we need to build more. Just build. I mean, we have to. Or we're not going to have a younger generation.
How do you get that money? Is that by raising taxes for residents so it can fund those programs?
So you can get it in a multitude of ways. Again, I like to use maybe the vacancy tax.
Or at least let those guys let me live there for a couple months while they're gone, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. The Kamaka law.
Yeah, I like that. So, that's one way, is through vacancy tax. Another way, well, in the short term, that brings up the issue of over-tourism, but the economy is rebounding pretty well. And so my point is there's going to be a lot more state and county money revenue being generated that can also be allocated towards housing. And you're right that government has only so much in its budget, but housing or lack thereof is the biggest issue. So we have to allocate state money towards it, or we're going to lose an entire generation. I keep saying it, but it's true. It's happening already.
Yeah, I see it. I mean, we're going through it. I mean, I look at places to rent in town, or I wanted to try to see if I could afford the affordable housing, like get in the lottery, whatever. It's crazy, yeah. Well, I mean, I wasn't approved because I just bought a truck. So that's. But if I didn't do that,
but it shouldn't come down to that, where you have to choose between a car and an apartment.
Yeah,
it's really
tough.
bad right now. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's part. So all the things you just mentioned is part of your plan for affordable housing, and it goes way more into detail.
Correct.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest issue. Yeah. Do you think it's more raising taxes for outsiders, or not allowing people to buy, not letting outsiders buy land here, so that the cost of living doesn't continue to go up? Or is it more lowering the cost of living, or giving that additional aid to locals?
It's a combination of all of that.
Okay.
The hard part is about not allowing out-of-state people to buy is there's all kinds of legal challenges and restrictions that make it difficult to pass a law. I mean, I personally would love to see a law like that, because we're in such a tough situation in terms of lack of affordable housing. But as of now, I don't think government can ban out-of-state investors. But again, we can make them pay for it, so to speak.
Higher taxes.
Yeah, we can charge them a higher tax.
Discourage them from buying.
For purchasing, for purchasing those units. I mean, for one example is higher property taxes. Increase the rate that they're being assessed. Increase or assess vacancy taxes, because they need to do their share, because they're getting a piece of Hawaii. They don't even live here. They were not born and raised here. Yet people like yourself don't stand a chance as it is right now. And so I have no qualms about that. I also have no qualms about enforcing the vacation rental law and confining vacation rentals to the resort areas, Waikiki, Turtle Bay, and Ko'olina. Everywhere else, housing should be for local residents.
Yeah, I love
but
that.
During the peak of right before COVID, when tourism was going through the roof in terms of numbers, there were vacation rentals all over the island. My wife and I and son, we live in Pauoa, a very middle-class neighborhood. And my wife, just for fun one day, looked up on Airbnb if there were vacation rentals in our neighborhood. And we laughed like, oh, no one's going to want to, no tourist is going to want to stay in our neighborhood, But there were. Because there's just too much money to be made. If you think about it, You could rent to a local family, a home in Enchanted Lake for, I don't know, several $1,000s a month. But if you can charge a tourist, a vacationing family, 5, 6, 7, 800 a day, because it comes with multiple bedrooms, kitchen, washer, dryer, right, refrigerator, you're gonna make way more money.
Yeah.
But I'm more sympathetic to local families not having an affordable place to stay than people who own that and are going to make less money. They're still going to make money. Let me emphasize. They're still going to make money. They'll just make less money, but they're still going to make money by renting to local families.
Yeah. And there's also the issue of rental cars.
Rental cars.
The cost of that is
Right.
so expensive. Oh, we got something printing. See, even the printer's mad at that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, well, and then that's not to even talk, we're talking numbers and financial impact, but it changes the nature of neighborhood communities, of neighborhoods.
Yes.
When half your neighbors are tourists that come and go, 1 week at a time.
Yeah, I've seen my neighborhood here on Oahu change like that.
Yeah.
Where we just got these new people that come in. They're not, as friendly. They don't really say hi.
Right.
They may or may not have a vacation rental going on because I keep seeing cars parked in my spot. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's unsettling because you see people come and go. You don't know if they're potential criminals or not. They don't care as much about making big noise. They're here for vacation. You want peace and quiet in your neighborhood. So that's the non-financial impact of all these illegal vacation rentals across the state.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, mahalo for answering that. We got two more, and then we'll wrap up the Instagram questions. Kanoe Lehua wants to know, did running for such a big position in office require thicker skin than you had?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, but I was prepared for it. I mean, running for office, you put yourself out there. It's so easy to comment now through social media. It's unregulated. It's the Wild West, and so you have to have very thick skin, and you have to roll with the punches, and sometimes you just need to ignore it or just not look at it because it's not productive.
Do you look at the comments?
I once in a while, but rarely, and I learned to try not to take it too personally.
Yeah, it says more about the other person than it does about you. People have way too much time.
Well, and also, the vast majority of people commenting, they don't put their real name. So, I put less stock in it that, it's easy to be brave.
Yeah, exactly. Behind a screen, right?
Behind a screen, those keyboard warriors,
exactly.
like they call them. And so, if you're willing to put your name there and want to actually have constructive dialogue, then great. But most of these people, got nothing better to do, it seems, and are not interested in a productive dialogue. So I tend to not pay attention to it.
What I noticed recently too with a lot of the posts that the clips we post to Instagram, where we cut up clips from the podcast, and people have certain opinions, or our guests do, and then some people I realize that people don't even comment on like the what is being said. It seems like they just want to get some sort of point across. Sometimes it's not even related. I'm just like, did you not watch the clip? It seems like they just want to just blabber on. Like they just want to share their opinion, whether it's right or wrong. They just want to disagree with somebody. It's so crazy. To me, it just seems like people, they want somebody to listen to them, and they're bored. I don't know what it is.
Right. And so, I mean, I'll give you a one example that you've even probably heard of that is just so unfounded and unfair, but I guess it comes with the territory. So, in Hawaii, everyone seems to be related to everyone. And, and my last name is not common, Amemiya. And so one of my cousins has been in the news lately, Roy Amemiya. He's been accused of something, but here's my response. So people are automatically lumping me with him and saying that's the reason not to vote for me in the lieutenant governor's race and maybe even in the mayor's race 2 years ago. But a couple of things. First of all, he hasn't gone to court. He deserves his day in court, and so let's let the court system play itself out. Secondly, I'm not related. I'm not involved in that case at all. Other than we share a last name. I've never been arrested. I've never been sued. I've never been accused of ethical misconduct. I pride myself on leading and living my life with integrity and character. And anyone who's worked with me, I'd like to think will I know and confident that they'll vouch for me. And so all I ask people out there who are going to vote in this election to judge me on me and not who I may be related to in a totally unrelated case. And then the third thing I need to bring up and point out is that whether it was the mayor's race or even the lieutenant governor's race now or the governor's race or even some city council races, Hawaii is too small. Hawaii is too interrelated. There's been several candidates who have run afoul of the law. There's several candidates whose relatives have run afoul of the law. I mean, different even from my cousin. Like, they've actually been convicted, or they've had relatives who have been convicted or sued or accused of ethical conduct. None of that applies to me. And if we're going to apply a broad brush at anyone who has a relative that has been in trouble or accused of being in trouble, no one's going to be qualified to run for office. And so I think there's a double standard out there of people, because there's some people who are very passionate of some candidates in other races, and that I respect that, and they're entitled to that. But you can't have it both ways. You can't say, my candidate got in trouble, but that's okay.
It's my candidate. It's fine.
No, exactly. That's my only response to that. And then the second thing that I've heard about in the mayor's race and in to a lesser extent in the lieutenant governor's race, I was lucky to have raised a decent amount of money in the mayor's race. But let me point out that the two people who raised the most money were first-time candidates, Rick Blangiardi and myself. We weren't in office when we raised that money. I feel that the public trusted us based on our past work. They believed in us, and that's why they donated to us. I'm being accused of being an insider and having connections, but again, I'm not like some of my opponents in the race, like Sylvia Luke at the House Finance Chair, or Ikaika Anderson, who's the City Council Chair, was the City Council Chair. They had the leverage to, they're in power. So there's a big difference from not being in office and being in office. I had nothing to offer at the time. I was running for mayor, if you're following me, and so it's an apples and oranges thing. And then the final thing I'll say about my network and developing contacts is because I'd like to think I've always helped the community. I've never personally profited from any of the work I've done in the past or in my current career. It's always about giving back to the community, giving back to the public, and that's what I'll continue to do as Lieutenant Governor.
So bottom line is, everybody raises money, everybody gets funds, right? And so some people keep some of that money. Is that why people are upset? Like, because everybody accepts money, everybody gets donations. So what makes it a problem when somebody accepts funds and somebody doesn't?
No, it's more that if the more money you raise, there's an implication that you're bought and that you're going to be subject to influence by the people who've donated to you. And so that's why I'm in favor of public financing, or that everyone gets money from a pool from state government, like in other states, and that it's a level playing field, and that you don't have to seek money, and that you don't have to feel the pressure in some cases of being beholden to the people who have given to you because they want something in return.
Okay, so a lot of it is like conditional. That's the thought, is that
right?
Like
quid pro quo, or whatever the term they use.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering about that because, like, I watched the debate, the lieutenant governor debate, and I see other political debates, and it turns me off because it's just everybody trying to talk over each other. Nobody has enough time to talk. Then they're like, "Hey, we got to move on to this person," and they're like, "Okay, you did this. No, you did this. Well, you did this," and I'm just like, everybody did everything. Well, like, what do I believe?
Right.
So it really turns someone who's not super into politics
Right.
off. Just like let's say your normal everyday bystander viewer, whatever.
Right.
And I don't think that it helps any of the candidates when those sort of debates happen, and like we don't have enough knowledge. Like, why are they saying like this person accepted this money and like this person accepted this money? So are they all corrupt? So that's why it makes people think, okay, so like, everybody's corrupt, So that's why I'm just like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on all those debates and like when people start coming at you? Because we're still kind of on the topic of thick skin, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like you have to get defensive at some point and like one up somebody? And does it ever get personal here, like, between the candidates? Like, it gets awkward after you step off stage and you're like, okay, good job, and then walk away.
Well, it can get contentious, but I don't take it personally.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to ask hard questions in these debates because there's too much at stake. There's a balance. You cannot make nice too much and not ask hard questions. And of course, you can't be rude and obnoxious. But part of a debate is to flesh out the issues, where people stand on things, and sometimes you have to ask uncomfortable questions so that you know where that candidate truly stands on an issue. A lot of times, politicians never answer the question, and sometimes in a debate you have to push them to answer the question. But yeah, debates are tough because you pointed out there's a time limit on how much time you have to answer the question. Sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes you can't ask follow-up questions of the candidate who doesn't really answer the question, and you know that in your head and want to ask them like, hey, you didn't answer the question, but the format doesn't allow you to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I'm gonna be honest.
Sure.
Yeah, so if I were to look into somebody that I'm more that I want to vote for, I'm kind of on the fence. I'd rather listen to single interviews instead of debates.
I agree with that. It's way more effective.
Yeah, I think that's more effective. Yeah, but then I guess it goes down to the fact that not everybody can get as much airtime or can get in with everybody. Like, I'm not gonna have all the political candidates on this podcast. That's just, we would have a whole like 3 months of just get
more.
Political candidate. Yeah. So and I just want to remind everybody, this is not an endorsement. We're just we're talking about his life, or like endorsement for any political candidates. But yeah, the whole realm is just so interesting, and I can see why people are afraid or intimidated by it, and just to talk about it. But okay, we gotta finish up the Instagram questions, and then we got a couple more things. So number one, Alexa fan wants to know stance on climate issue, destruction of nature, and what will be done about it.
Okay, well, probably a close second to solving or addressing the affordable housing crisis in Hawaii is the climate crisis we're facing, or climate emergency, as some refer it to. We live in an island state. We're incredibly vulnerable to the damage being caused to our climate by greenhouse gases and other issues. And so we need to come up with a climate action plan. To my knowledge, there is no comprehensive statewide plan on how we're going to address it, benchmarks, timelines. We need to move now. The climate is already impacting our environment here in Hawaii. The sea level's rising. It's getting warmer. There's less trade winds. So that's affecting not only our comfort level, but it's affecting our agricultural crops. The sea level rise is affecting homes that are built along the ocean or other structures. Anyone who's driven out from town to on the way out to Kahuku and Laie, see that the highway is literally falling into the ocean because of sea level rise and the effects of climate change. And so we need to address that issue just as urgently, really, as the affordable housing crisis, because our island is disappearing, our islands, because of sea level rise. There's projections that the sea level will rise 3.5 feet by the year 2100. And in the big scheme of things, that's not that long from now. I mean, we're unlikely to be around, but our children.
I'm living to 100. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you might make it. I don't know if I want to be alive back then. I'll be, Lord knows how old I'll be. But 3.5 feet is a staggering number. I mean, that basically means everything, on the shore or along the beach is going to be underwater. And so what are we doing to address the sea level rise? What are we doing to move structures inland if we need to? We need to. You can't just decide and do that in a couple years. We need to have a plan to address sea level rise immediately, and every other situation involving climate change and the damage to Hawaii.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's nice to know that you care about the environment and you actually believe it's an issue, because there's some people who don't. Yeah, surprisingly. Yeah. Okay, so mahalo everybody for the Instagram questions. Make sure you leave some on the next podcast, and maybe your question will make it on the next episode. All right, so now I just want to talk about some things about culture. So like, you grew up in a Japanese household, right? And then you were adopted, hanai'd by a family. So where did you feel like you fit in the local culture, and like what was your upbringings like? Did you feel like you were pretty connected to the local culture? You had a good grasp on like Hawaiian culture. I like to be specific on local culture and Hawaiian culture, because they're different.
Right. So, well, of course. So, I'm Japanese, and my Hanai family is Japanese, and so there was a strong Japanese influence. But we were also influenced by local culture and Hawaiian culture. I have a lot of relatives blood relatives that are part Hawaiian or part Native Hawaiian. And interestingly enough, I go to family parties now, and with each succeeding generation, pure Japanese we don't exist in the younger generation. Hapa kids, exactly.
Yeah, it's the future.
Yes, and so
the plate lunch and the mixed plates.
So through marriage and otherwise, so I would say through marriage, of my relatives to Hawaiians and others, non-Japanese, and through sports growing up. That's another value of sports. You interact with people from all walks of life, from all different communities, not just East Honolulu. And so that's where I met, a lot of people from, whether they're Hawaiian or Caucasian or Filipino or Chinese. That's how I got to be immersed in all different types of cultures in Hawaii. And like many people who have been born and raised here, the Native Hawaiian culture is very important. It's the foundation for what makes Hawaii special, from the cultural standpoint, from the value standpoint, or even the rituals may not be the word, but the traditions that are so Hawaii, like baby luau or what
hula.
else? Or of course, or hula, or music, or just the concept of being selfless and giving.
The Hawaiian mindset.
The Hawaiian mindset is just always having aloha for people and helping people. That's something that's very important, that I learned from an early age. And so, even though I grew up in East Honolulu, I did have the opportunity. I have relatives, like all of us, all over the island. So we would not just be confined to that area all the time.
Nice. Okay. What is one thing that you wish people knew about you that they don't?
Well, they view me as a lawyer, businessman. The high school sports people know what I'm all about, and I don't have to explain myself. But people outside that realm, I have to do a better job. But what I wish they knew is that my core being, my motivation in life is helping communities, helping the younger generation. A fair amount of people know that, but I wish more people knew about that, about me. Again, in Hawaii, we're all subject to misperceptions and stereotypes, whether you're Native Hawaiian or Japanese or Caucasian. And I wish people were more open-minded, and that you can't always judge a book by its cover, and so that's one thing I suppose I wish I knew. I learned that in the campaign, but so part of it was campaigns are vicious. I knew that going in, and your opponents are going to perpetuate stereotypes and myths about you, and so there were some people that take what is said about you at face value, right or wrong, and so that's my long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah. Well, just going off that last thing is people don't believe everything you hear. Don't believe everything you say. You see. Make sure you do your research. Look into people. Don't just take everything at face value. I think that's so important. Listen to people. Give people a chance. Even if we're talking about politicians, like for example, BJ Penn. Listen to the guy. Give him a chance. Maybe he's not the right candidate, but at least listen to him. You don't like any of the Democratic candidates. Listen to them. Hear what they have to say, because maybe you're a Republican and you only vote red. Listen. Just listen to them, collect data, and then make your decision.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, I mean, in an ideal world, I almost wish you didn't have to choose a political party, because especially in this toxic climate in politics, once someone says they're a Democrat or a Republican, then already people have a lot of perceptions and misperceptions.
Preconceived notions.
Preconceived notions. And again, I wish that wasn't the case, and it's come to the point where just because you declared a party, some people will automatically dismiss you no matter what. They don't even want to learn about you. And that's wrong. And I fault both parties for that. And I'll add that it's not healthy for any one party in Hawaii or on the national scale to dominate. And right now it's clear the Democratic, whoever is in power, it's almost inevitable, unfortunately, that they become complacent. They lose touch with working families. And so I prefer, like everything in life, more balance, and it will hold the party in power more accountable. And so it's not healthy for any one party to dominate so much like it does here in Hawaii. I think even Democrats agree with that, who are in the Democratic Party. Now, talking about candidates, first-time candidates like BJ Penn, whether you agree with him or not, he's captured a lot of people's imagination. And in the big scheme of things, to me, the more people that get engaged in politics, that care, that actually vote, in the long run, that's actually a good thing.
I like that he's bringing a lot of new voters.
Yes.
That's one good thing. You can't fault the guy for that. Yeah.
Obviously, I want to win. I want to get the most votes. But in the long run, if everyone votes, automatically Hawaii is going to be better. I really believe that, because it'll keep politicians on their toes. Because they'll realize, it's not just the unions, not just big business, or not just older people that I got to cater to. I got to pay attention to younger people.
Yeah, these young whippersnappers, huh?
Yes. And that's a good thing, because one of the biggest problems in Hawaii and nationally is that our elected officials are largely out of touch with what their role and purpose is in office and who they need to fight for. Big business and big unions, they don't need government's help. They're already powerful. They need to help working families, because we're losing the fabric of Hawaii. We're losing the fabric of our country, because so many people are feeling disenfranchised. Yeah. And that government is not listening to them. And to a large extent, they're right. So in the big scheme of things, taking party affiliations aside, the more people that run for office, the more people that create excitement and interest, especially in first-time voters, that's really a good thing. And because it's always better to have choices, Kamaka, too. That's the other thing I'm really bullish about, that there's too many races in Hawaii where there's one candidate and that person's uncontested. They're not motivated to be open-minded to everyone because they know they're in already. Yeah. Right? And so, the more choices you have, the more first-time candidates you have, that's always a good thing. The other thing that I really want to see in Hawaii politics is elected officials that better represent the cross-section of our state.
Representation.
So, yes, and representation means a lot of things like gender, ethnic diversification, age diversification, where you come from, and not just Honolulu, but the neighbor islands, LGBTQ representation. I want our elected officials to better reflect Hawaii because they'll, by nature, make better informed decisions, as opposed to just the same old people running for office. Because that's kind of what's happening now. You have entrenched politicians who stay in office for decades, and then the new candidates tend to be people who worked at the Capitol or worked for a politician. I'm not saying none of them should run, but we can't. They're coming from the same mindset and page, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So I want to see more diversity in our candidates, and we're kind of getting it, as you alluded
this year.
to.
This is a very interesting year.
Right.
Yeah.
And we elected officials would, in my opinion, be foolish to dismiss or poo-poo the excitement that some of our candidates are generating. I mean, I've seen the BJ Penn rallies, and that's a politician's dream of political candidates. The excitement and the size of the crowd. Yeah. I mean, that's telling us something, that he's connecting with people more so than a lot of our elected officials.
I think because he's more relatable in a sense, because he's almost at the ground floor, at the ground level with the people. And that's what I enjoyed when I met with you. We were just talking about, just normal things, where you're obviously an executive director, you could be viewed as like, you got this higher position, the hierarchy is different between someone like you and I, right? But when you just talk to somebody, you get to know them, you have a conversation, you're like, well, maybe we're not so different, right?
Exactly.
I think that's the coolest thing, and especially, but when you do talk with somebody local, and if you do elect somebody who not only lives here but is from here, it's different because you understand it differently. Which is why I think your advantage that you mentioned is you've worked with all types of different people. You've worked on statewide, in Ka'u, in Hawaii Kai, all the way to Waianae, Laie, like all corners of the state. So you've been through different groups of you've worked with different groups of people. So I would like that in my elected official, or for someone who just moved here and only has their own preconception of what Hawaii should be or what Hawaii is in their eyes, over than what the people want. Because then you don't listen to the people. You just you do what the unions say, right?
Exactly.
Or what you come in with your own political agenda instead of just what do the people want? What does the Native Hawaiian community, the people who are sovereign to this land, what do they want?
Right.
Yeah.
So you touched upon something that I think is it gives me hope and encouragement. So we could end this by saying this conversation was largely depressing in a lot of ways, or at least the future of Hawaii is depressing unless we bring change.
Unless we do something about it, yes.
So I will, I want to make sure I say this before this podcast is finished, that for all the challenges we're facing, for all the discouraging trends, I do have hope. I do have optimism, and the reason I believe in our younger generation. Our younger generation, and I'm talking Generation X and Z, where my son's in Generation Z. I have hope because they're largely better educated. They're largely more open-minded. They've embraced technology. They learn they've learned to be innovative and creative and not just learn one way. Like they don't in my time, you memorize science formulas in chemistry or mathematical formulas. You learn to work collaboratively. You learn there's different ways to come to a solution. I also feel the younger generation is more compassionate and cares about the community way more than when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And so that brings me hope. And there's a younger generation it's the Hapa generation. And that's a good thing too, because obviously if you're Hapa, you're gonna understand two or more ethnic groups or cultures, right? And you can't be biased, or you less of a tendency to be biased if you are a product of multiple cultures and ethnicities, like I said. And so, and the younger generation is more worldly. Partly it's the internet. The internet's the game changer.
Yeah, I think with social media
because in the old days, if you wanted to learn about Japan, you could read a book, but or obviously go there. But how many people can go there now? With virtual tours and stuff. I mean, or even colleges, you can almost feel like you went there. Like when my son was looking for colleges. I mean, we went to some campuses, but we didn't have to visit because they show you everything, how a dorm room looks, how the cafeteria looks, how the campus looks. Yeah. But similar with the internet and digital media and social media is the great equalizer for a geographically isolated place like Hawaii. And I really believe that this is the time. This is the generation and the time for Native Hawaiians. It's time for Native Hawaiians to step up even more. And in my mayoral campaign, I was lucky to have a lot of younger people, Native Hawaiian and not a Native Hawaiian, but their breadth of knowledge, they've been around the world, they've been educated at top colleges on the continent. And they're bringing that knowledge back here, and I just think it's a great thing that their voices are getting stronger. They have a balanced outlook at the state, and they want to further the Native Hawaiian cause, which is natural, but they also see the big picture too. And they have the best of both worlds. I mean, that may be controversial to some of the more old school thought about Native Hawaiian movement, but I really like what the younger generation is doing. They understand you have to be balanced and compromise where necessary, but stay true to their culture and heritage.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense.
Yes. And I think people in
like
my
you,
generation,
for example.
we're adaptable. We change with the times. We're innovative. We don't want to just get left behind.
Right, you don't sell out, but you also understand that you have to compromise at times, right? Yeah. It can't be an either-or proposition if we are all to move forward collectively as a state.
Yeah, and I think, with social media, it shows more people doing nice things, and, it inspires us. Maybe, there's a bad side, maybe makes us depressed because we're not doing what somebody else does. But with social media, there's a lot of social pressure for us to be better people. Because you don't want to get caught doing something, having a bad day. Somebody's going to call you out. You're going to get canceled, the whole cancel culture. I believe a lot of it is virtual signaling, where it's just like, everybody's doing it. I got to do it too. Which in some trends, some things, like the Hawaiian Renaissance is a good thing, right? You want to be a part of that. And then there's other things that maybe it can kind of be a little worse. But yeah, just like you're saying, I also believe... even though we were talking about some of the, these heavy issues, it seems like the future is bleak. But to me, the future is bright because we have so many people like myself that care so much about our community, that wants nothing but the best for our, our future generations, our Native Hawaiian community. And we just need leaders to lead the people. Yeah. Right.
And we need elected officials that will give an opportunity to your generation, and right now that's not happening. that it's the same old people in office taking care of the same old people, not giving your generation a chance. And I think that's wrong. And like I said earlier, not to pat myself on the back too much, but I'm proud of my campaign team, and it's reflective of what I value and thinks is important. You know, I have the youngest campaign team. I have the most diverse campaign team. I have more women than men on my campaign team. I have LGBTQ on my campaign. You know, I have, you know, Native Hawaiians that I really respect and admire, and that's how I'm going to lead if I'm elected lieutenant governor. I'm going to bring that same kind of diversity of mindset, of knowledge to my team, and that's what we need to replicate across the whole state, not just in politics, but in business, in community, in nonprofit. It's slowly happening, but it's not happening fast enough, and we need to bring more enlightened, open-minded people in elected office.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great answer. I know we're keeping you here for longer than you probably can be here. I'm sure if you could choose, you'd be here all day, right?
Of course.
You'd never want to leave. Yeah. All right. So I gotta ask you before we end this podcast, what is a life hack that you have that you want to share with the people?
I've seen some of your prior podcasts, and they took all the good ones, like like Lanai, I believe, mentioned mental health, but which is a passion of mine because my mother suffers from mental illness, and I've seen the problem the state has in not providing enough mental health services for people like my mom and many other people in her situation. But since he took that important topic or issue, I want to focus on physical fitness and well-being, because that sometimes gets overlooked by people because life is too hectic and too fast. But you have to find time for physical fitness, because as you know, overall well-being is dependent on physical, mental, and emotional, among other things. And so my life hack, it's kind of boring and unexciting, but it's to just work out at home in the morning. It's because I found that if I work out in the afternoon, I don't get to it half the time, or I'm too tired or find too many excuses. But work out in the morning, work out at home, as opposed to a gym or fitness center, which I'm not against. That's great if you can afford to do that and have the time. But just doing it in my living room, there's so many platforms to, whether it's YouTube or you sign up for at a low monthly fee to watch videos of workouts, you can still get in decent shape with just body weight, plyometrics, that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of my life hack. I used to go to a club or fitness center to work out, which was great. But once I worked out at home, it's almost the same.
Cheaper.
And
that's the life hack right there. It's cheaper to work out at home.
It's cheaper and you save more time by working out at home. And so that's my life hack for the day.
I agree. That's actually how I live my life. I like to do my workouts in the morning. I watch a video, either yoga or like a HIIT workout on my laptop. Exactly. I love it. The endorphins get going in the morning. I feel like I have more energy when I work out than I don't work out, which is a weird thing. But it's just because of how, our biological,
totally
the physiological structure of our bodies.
Right. The endorphins or whatever kick in, like you said. And so there are mornings where I really don't want to work out, and I just force myself
every morning.
Pretty much every morning. Yeah, because it's I show the workout on TV, right? I'm in the living room. I'm on the sofa, very comfortable. Like, oh, should I work out? I don't want to. But then I force myself to. And to your point, right after I'm done, I feel good. I'm actually feel more awake, like you said, and more energized. And it's just psychologically, I did something good today.
Yes, yeah.
And I got my workout out of the way. I don't have to worry about it the rest of the day, So, okay, I'm not the only one that
it's me.
Doesn't want to work out every morning and forces myself to.
Yeah, I like to do it in the morning because I like to start my day with the hardest thing. If you can get that, just do the hardest thing, which is like an intense workout, then the rest of the day is easy. Yeah, and I also like to think of my physical workouts as like, it's physical health, but it's also mental health too, because say like surfing, I love surfing because it's, hour, half, 2 hours, however long I'm out. It's 2 hours away from my phone. It's from technology that I don't have to think about it. I'm getting a good workout, but I'm also kind of just like I have an escape from everything going on in the world. Right. I'm not worried about things going on in politics and my business, whatever. I'm worried about which wave I gotta take and not cutting somebody off, or maybe out paddling somebody here. That's all I'm thinking about. Right. Yeah, and it's great for my mental health. Yeah.
Totally agree. Mm-hmm. It takes your mind off the stresses of life. Yeah. When you're working out.
Exactly.
So, yep. We're on the same page.
Okay, cool. All right, so last one before we wrap up. What's a good food place to eat at after this? What's your favorite local food place to eat at?
There's so many places I like. That's the other great thing about Hawaii. We're multicultural, and so there's no shortage of good places to eat. But if I had to pick one, I would say Helena's.
Okay.
Yeah, in I think Kalihi, Kapalama area. Because it's just comfort food. We love all kinds of foods: Hawaiian food, Japanese, Chinese, Korean. But I would say there, because it's just so good there, and it's something that is comforting to us, and so I'd probably go there. But there's so many other places I could go on and on, but that's probably our go-to place if we really want to
eat good Hawaiian food and Kanaka attack after.
That's for sure. Because I always over-order, but because the food's so good, I get the combination.
Yeah.
Kalua pig, pipi kaula, poi, lomi salmon, and even squid luau, I believe, and haupia. Yeah, puts me over the edge, but nice. It tastes good.
Right on. Okay, cool. So where can we find you? What are your socials? Where can people support you?
I got a bunch, but I guess I'll keep it simple. So my Instagram and Facebook is Keith Amemiya. TikTok is Keith Amemiya. Twitter's.
Oh, he's on TikTok. It's all for all you younger generation.
It's all one. I mean, Keith Amemiya. All underscore. I mean, lowercase. One word. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
Nice. Yeah. Do you do TikTok dances?
Very badly. But I do. But I also try to educate people. TikTok is such a great forum to learn about things. So we've incorporated some campaign TikToks, like how to register as a candidate. I walked through people to do that. We actually drove, followed me to the Office of Elections. Follow me on the way to a debate, and what I do to
I've seen some of those actually.
Yeah. So
you have a good social media coordinator.
The best.
Yeah.
The best. And yes, I've done some dances with my wife and son. They're very reluctant, but some of them have been very popular. I guess people like to see a different side of you, and a fun side and a family side where we do it together. And so my son is not as keen about it, so we're not
forcing. Dad, not this again.
Yes, exactly. So we're trying to be mindful and respectful, even though those are some of the most heavily viewed TikToks. But we try to balance some serious and some not so serious to show all facets of me and my family.
Nice. That's awesome. Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time from your busy day and coming here, and I wish you the best of luck on your campaign. Do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I mean, other than it was a great conversation, and all of us are on the same page, including your viewers in podcast land, that we care about Hawaii. We want to do our part to create a better future, and let's continue to work together, and let's be productive, and let's if we agree, let's agree to disagree, and not be so black and white. We live in an island state. Everyone's interconnected, and the only way we're going to move forward is to dialogue and compromise.
And listen to each other.
And listening to each other.
Yeah.
Totally, yes, for sure.
Awesome. Okay, well, mahalo, Keith, for joining us on the Hawaiiverse podcast. Check us out on Hawaiiverse.com, the best place to support local. Spread aloha, be kind to one another, and mahalo for listening to us today. New episodes every Thursday, so make sure you follow us and leave a review. I'm your host, Kamaka, and you'll hear me next time on the Hawaiiverse podcast. Hui ho.